A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
A viewer has asked the following: how can the rabbi claim that the volume of an olive is the volume of an actual olive when it is well known that Rambam holds that it is 1/3 of the volume of an egg?
This would be an excellent question if in fact Rambam stated such a thing. I imagine that the person asking this question has heard from different sources. One such source can be found in the Mishnah Berurah, written by the Rabbanu Agadol Hafetz Chaim Zatzal. His Perush, the Mishnah Berurah on Shulchan Aruch Or HaHaim Siman Tau Pei Waw 486, where the Shulchan Aruch states that there are those who say that the shi'ur, the volume of a zayit, of a kezayit, of an olive, is half the volume of one chicken egg. And this is in fact one view of a particular Ba'al Tosafot, Rabbeinu Yitzhak Hazaken Ba'al Tosafot, the major Tosafist after the time of Rabbeinu Tam. And this is his view in the Tosafot in Masechet Yomah Daf Pei. And on this basis the Shulchan Aruch quotes this opinion without actually stating that he agrees. If one looks in the Mishnah Berurah, for example, on that siman, on that spot in the Shulchan Aruch, one finds that he writes that according to the Rambam, it is not a half of an egg, but is rather approximately 1/3 of one chicken egg. The problem with all of this is that the Rambam actually says no such thing. What we know about the Rambam's view regarding kezayit is as follows. We have a sugya in the Talmud Bavli Masechet Eruvin Daf Pebeth 82, which discusses the amount of food required to make an eruv. And the view of one of the Tanaim quoted in that sugya, Rabbi Yohanan ben Baroka, is that the volume equals, the food required is the volume of 18 grogrot, that is to say dried figs, which Rambam writes based on the view of Rabbi Yohanan ben Baroka, which equals 6 average chicken eggs, from which we understand that a dried fig is equal to 1/3 the volume of a chicken egg, which is something which any person can see with his own eyes to be entirely true and accurate. We also have another statement in the Talmud Bavli, Masechet Shabbat Daf Tzadi Aleph 91, which says plainly, and which really is stating the obvious, that kezayit, the volume of an olive, is less than that of a grogeret, of a dried fig. Therefore, what we know from the Rambam is that if 3 dried figs equal in volume 1 chicken egg, and a kezayit, the volume of an olive, is less than a grogeret of a dried fig, therefore a kezayit is less than 1/3 of an egg, which is entirely true. It is less than 1/3 of an egg. But this does not mean that it is exactly 1/3 or even near 1/3. All it means is that it is less than 1/3. How much less, one cannot possibly know from what Rambam states. Just as we cannot possibly know what Rabbeinu Tam, for example, thought on this matter also, because Rabbeinu Tam, in the Tosafot that I mentioned before, Masechet Yomah Daf Pei, according to his interpretation of the various sugyot pertaining to this matter, the size of a kezayit of an olive is less than 3/10 of the size of a volume, that is to say, of an egg. How much less than 3/10 of an egg, we cannot possibly know. And it is of course true that an olive is less than 3/10 that of an egg in volume. How much less, Rabbeinu Tam does not say. What we do know, therefore, from Rabbeinu Tam at least, is that he disagrees with the view of Rabbeinu Yitzhak, the view quoted in the other view quoted in the Tosafot, and that which is quoted by many Posakim later, and in the Shulchan Aruch also, as one possible view. So we know that according to Rabbeinu Tam and according to Rambam, the size of a kezayit, the volume of a kezayit, is less than in the case of Rabbeinu Tam, less than 3/10 of an egg. In the case of Rambam, it is less than 1/3 of an egg, but how much less, we don't know. It could be half as much again, it could be not less than 1/3, it could be 1/6, it could be 1/9, it could be 1/15. It's impossible to know. The fact is that Rambam nowhere states what the volume of a kezayit is, and the reason for this is extremely simple and straightforward, because it is unnecessary to state the obvious. Rambam was familiar with olives. He was born in Spain, which has always had huge amounts of olives and olive oil. Spain to this day is the largest producer of olives and olive oil. And he later lived in the Middle East, lived in Egypt. In all these countries where Rambam resided, and all the places of which he had experience, there were always olives present and readily available, and every person knew the size of an olive. Therefore, it was unnecessary to state the volume of an olive in terms of some other item. The same is true for all the Rishonim, all the Chachamim who lived in Spain and the Middle East. Not one of them ever tried to grapple with the question or define the volume of an olive in terms of something else. It is really very simple when one thinks about it. If I was to tell a young boy, I want you to go to the store, the toy store, and buy a ball the size of an orange. Well, that's a very simple proposition, assuming that the boy knows what an orange is, that he has seen an orange. But if he has, for whatever reason, never seen an orange, he doesn't have any idea what I'm talking about. In which case he would say to me, well, I'll be happy to do so, but I don't know what the size of an orange is. So I would have to tell him, well, have you seen a grapefruit? He would say, perhaps yes. And I would say, well, the ball that I'm describing should be less than the size of a grapefruit and larger than a tennis ball. Have you seen a tennis ball? He would say, yes, all right, I understand. So it has to be in between the size of a tennis ball and the size of a grapefruit. And then he would go off happily and buy the ball, and he'd probably come back with a ball approximately the size of an orange. The reason I would have to do all of that is because this boy had never seen an orange. In exactly the same way, the Posekim who described olives in terms of something else, those who grappled and had difficulty in nailing down the volume of an olive, the reason for all of this is because they themselves were unfamiliar with olives. They in fact never saw olives. It is entirely reasonable, in fact almost certain, that Rabbeinu Tam and Rabbeinu Yitzchak Barat Tosafot, and this is probably true for Rashi and almost all the Posekim from that part of the world in medieval times, apparently not one of them actually saw an olive. Or if one of them here or there perhaps saw an olive, it was a very, very rare item, and they couldn't be sure if this was the common size of an olive or what have you. They couldn't be certain of these things at all. In all likelihood, they never saw olives. And this is confirmed by statements by some other Posekim from that time, from that period, who, when coming to Eretz Yisrael, related that they have now come to Eretz Yisrael and have seen olives, and now they understand what the size of an olive actually is. But those who were familiar with olives, such as Rambam, never discussed the size of an olive because this was self-evident. And therefore, the statement which appears in the Mishnah Berurah is unfortunately imprecise and misleading, and cannot be taken at face value. And therefore, the Rambam is of the view, the very surprising view you might say, that the size of an olive is exactly that. It is the size of an olive, the volume of an olive. And this was not only the view of the Rambam, this was the view of all the Rishonim, all the great halachic experts and Talmudists of in Spain, Portugal, in the Middle East, Turkey, etc., Italy. So all these people, these things were plain and obvious. And this was not only the view of Posekim in ancient times or in the medieval times, this was also true in times much closer to our own. It is well known that Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, the great Talmid of the Gra, the Gaon of Vilna, was of the view, exactly the same view, that the shi'ur of a kezayit is exactly that, the size of an olive. This is quoted by no less an authority than Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Kanievsky, the famous author of the Kirot Yaakov, or the Kiros Yankov if you prefer, and his Chidushim to Masechet Pesachim, Daf Lamed He 38. There he states this tradition, which is also quoted in other sources regarding Rabbi Chaim Volozhin. So we see that not only is it not the universal or even standard halachic opinion that an olive is to be described and to be conceived of being in volume a half of an egg or a third of an egg, but rather this was only one of a number of views that have been expressed on the subject, a view that was based on a lack of knowledge, a lack of familiarity with the item under discussion, the olive, and therefore it goes without saying that the Rambam was never of such an opinion and never made such a statement.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.